Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl Top 10 with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey peeps, it is time for another top 5 list of my top 5 expansions of 2016. Late as usual because that's how I roll, that's my style, that's my unique YouTube gimmick. Are you buying this yet? Probably not. So I did this last year, just top 5 expansions, because there were more than 5 expansions that I really liked in the past year, but some of them were just like legendary over and over again. And some of them were just like, I like them, but it's not like they were groundbreaking. 5 feels like the right number for this type of list. So we'll go over the last 5 that I talked about last year at the end of the video. But without further ado, as I like to say for some reason, let's get right to this year's list. My number 5 expansion of 2016 was Eldritch Horror Signs of Carcosa. Now, the Dreamlands expansion, which is a big box expansion, just came out right after the new year, so it missed 2016. But Signs of Carcosa is one of the smaller box expansions, but still very good. This introduced the whole King of Yellow, a great old one, Hastur, which is one of the more interesting elder gods if you're really into the Cthulhu mythos. And I'm really not, but I love Eldritch Horror, and I like how, I think of all of the ancient, great old ones, or whatever you want to call them, Hastur is the most interesting with the whole, the yellow sign and all of that stuff. So lots of interesting things here, a lot of really great characters. Like, I have loved Eldritch Horrors the most when it's giving you incredibly interesting characters to play as, because that's really the crux of the game. The gameplay in Eldritch Horror is very simple, so when they give you characters that feel distinct from the other ones and make you feel like you're doing and specializing in something different, that's what I've appreciated most, and I remember Signs of Carcosa as being the best at that, even though so many other things that introduced are just kind of the same. But having more content for the game is never a bad thing, especially if you've only got the base game. If you've only got the base game, I highly recommend Mountains of Madness, the first big box expansion. But if you don't want to delve that far into it yet, or you just want something else on top of that, I think Sign of Carcosa is another really good one. Also Strange Remnants, which was another small box expansion. I don't recommend the first small box expansion until you've already delved into all the other ones, which I think was Forsaken Lore, because if I remember correctly, that didn't include new characters, which was a bummer. But Sign of Carcosa is another great Eldritch Horror expansion for a great game. That's my number 5 expansion of 2016. My number 4 expansion of 2016 is for possibly the oldest game in my collection, if you count all the different editions of it, and that is Cosmic Encounter, Cosmic Eons. Cosmic Encounter going back into the 70s, but I'm talking about the latest edition of it, which is from Fantasy Flight Games. And Cosmic Eons is the latest expansion. They keep pumping out these expansions. I'll keep buying them. And actually, very similar to what I was saying with Eldritch Horror, but especially in Cosmic Encounter, the reason you get a Cosmic Encounter expansion is for the new aliens, the new powers, technically. There's always some new mechanism in a Cosmic Encounter expansion. The one in Cosmic Aeons is now there's a couple of things. Some of the alien powers have these essence cards, which are just another way to implement their power. Nothing groundbreaking. The innovative thing in this expansion is that you can now hide. There's like little dials that you can use to hide what commitment you're putting forth if you choose to support one side in an encounter as an ally. And I like it in theory. In implementation, it didn't work out very well. Or it worked, I wasn't interested in it. I like the way old giving support works. That's me. I don't feel the need for it to change. Just like in other expansions, like the Satellite one, I never used that. The Team Up Alliance thing, never used that. But it doesn't matter, okay? Because why, at least as far as I'm concerned, you buy these for the powers, and there are some great powers in this set. I really love it. They brought back some of the old school designers of the game to utilize these, and you can tell. There's the Mooch, which I thought was a lot of fun, with the little couch token. There is, my favorite is the Klutz. It's the first one I tried of this new set, and I love it the most. It's just so fun. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I just destroyed your ships. It's great. I mean, I could sit here. It would take forever to explain, because there's a ton of new aliens. There's at least, I think, 20 or 30 in just this expansion. They're all fantastic. In different ways. They're all interesting. And as always, it's always about how you choose to negotiate with the other players. Because even if you have an incredibly overpowered power, the other players can gang up on you. Even if your power is incredibly weak, You make yourself not a threat, win together with other people, and this is just another example of more creativity in the game, and that's why I love the game to begin with. So that is Cosmic Eons for Cosmic Encounter, my number 4. For my number 3, it's going to be a legendary expansion, but I never like to load down my list with multiple expansions for the same game. So I'm going to pick the one I like the most. I think there were actually 3 this year. You can always count on legendary to have a lot of expansions. That's not even counting the legendary encounters games. But for legendary, you had the Deadpool expansion, which sucked. Sorry, it just sucked. You had the Captain America 75th Anniversary expansion, which was really good, but a small box expansion, so whatever. The big box expansion for the year was Civil War, and while I think the original Civil War, the movie was great, the comic books mostly sucked, but the expansion for Legendary is great because it introduced a ton of really cool things. You had double cards where you had each physical card had 2 separate cards on it. You chose which one to implement when you played it, and by doing that, there was some really cool characters introduced, or character combinations. So you had Storm teaming up with Black Panther, but more importantly for me, given my childhood and the comic books that I liked growing up, were Cloak and Dagger finally in the game, which is awesome. You had new sidekicks you can add to the deck, which were the pets of the Marvel Universe, like Lockjaw and Lockheed, which are great. I love those little elements to it. Great. There's new wounds for the deck. There's just so many new things to the game, but also new stuff added to the existing elements of the game to change those up. Great news, always great schemes, which are one of the ways that this game always innovates and has really cool things added, more thematic elements added to the game. Tons of new characters, tons of new ways to play those characters. Just lots of great fun people from the Marvel Universe, and Hulkling too. All right, sorry Hulkling fans, but Wiccan could have done better, is what I'm trying to say here. But regardless of all of that, Legendary is a fantastic game, and I'll take anything I can get for it, even the Deadpool expansion. But especially when it's as good as Legendary Civil War, I'll always be there to buy it and try it. That is Legendary Civil War, my number 3 expansion of 2016. Well, for my number 2 of 2016, it's going to be a Kingdom Death expansion, but much like with Legendary, but much more to the extreme in this case, there were multiple expansions. I didn't want to put them all on the list. Now, to be honest, I think total, there were 10 expansions from the original Kickstarter for Kingdom Death. They didn't all hit the backers until February, maybe late January of this year, and I haven't had time to delve into all of them. I've dabbled in some of the biggest and most noteworthy of them, and everything I've done has been great so far. But if I had to pick one that I've tried and which I really have enjoyed and also want to make note of for people who might be interested in more of the stuff for Kingdom Death, that would be the Dragon King expansion. Now, there are other expansions for the game, like the Sunstalker expansion, that sort of meet it in scope, in terms of scope. But I think the Dragon King, for me personally, I just love the idea of it. I don't know how much I want to get into spoilery stuff, but basically, this expansion and the Sunstalker expansion allow you to change how the entire campaign works. It's not just, they're called People of the Blank. So the base game is People of the Lantern, the Dragon King is the People of the Stars, and the game plays mostly the same, but it gives you a different bent as to what your goals are, different thematic elements of the game, different other mechanical elements of the game that are different. In this case, you're sort of taken under the tutelage of a Dragon King, which is the name of the expansion. Like when a character says the name of the movie in a movie. But it's just really great how that works. The dragon is a new quarry monster, which is great. It's always good to have more quarries in the game, even though this one's really strong. You're not going to be fighting it right away. Lots of new equipment, new extra cards for all the existing decks. Just tons of contents, tons of stuff, and it feels different, distinct, and very, very cool. And the miniatures are amazing, as every miniature is in this game. But I think this is one of the, even though it's, I think, the most expensive, or close to the most expensive of, or tied with the most expensive for Sunstalker of the original expansions, it is worth it if you are so inclined to spend the money on it, because it's, again, so much stuff, and it changes your campaign so dramatically that it's just going to give you even more stuff to do with your core game. They are reprinting it for the new edition of the game. I don't know exactly what's going to change. I'm sure they're just going to correct some stuff with the cards. So if you can get a copy of it, or if you already got it and you're just wondering, should I really bother with trying it? Do it. It's great. That is the Dragon King expansion for Kingdom Death Monster, at least the first edition of it. Now, for my number one, I do want to preface this by saying that, because some of you might think wow, why wouldn't something as broad and expansive and expensive and so neat looking and cool as the Dragon King expansion from Kingdom Death, your favorite game, be number one? Well, that's because while I really enjoyed that expansion, I didn't necessarily think that it changed the original game in such a drastic way that it was necessary for you to even enjoy the core game, or that it changed how the game would be progressing going forward, or what your expectations were. It's just a ton of cool stuff to add more variety to the game. But in the case of my number one, which is the Prophecy of Dragons expansion for Time Stories, I think it is the perfect idea of what I'm looking for in an expansion, because it took Time Stories, which was just a good game, a great game, really, but in A Prophecy of Dragons, I think, is what the game should be and could be moving forward. Much more content than any of the other expansions for Time Stories. More great, innovative elements to it, even for a game that's already innovative, Time Stories. And I can't say too much because of spoilers, but it really showed what the game can be moving forward as far as plot twists and turns, and an overarching narrative and mysteries and clues and things that can carry over, and so on and so forth. It was so much fun, because I've played several Time Stories expansions at this point, including the base game, and we might try them twice in the same night, and then if we don't solve it completely, I'll come back to it at some other point. We sat and played Prophecy of Dragons 4 or 5 times until we got it exactly right, and saw everything in the expansion the night that we did it. What I can tell you without giving away spoilers is that, unlike the other expansions where you're just going through different time periods on Earth, this one had you go into an alternate universe that was fantasy-based, Tolkien fantasy-based. And so you have a mission and things you need to do, and at some point things just go off the rails. But it's great. It's got the amazing artwork of Vincent Dutrait. There's always different artists for every expansion of the game. There was another Time Stories expansion that came out this year, at least one other one, the Under the Mask, which was an ancient Egypt-themed time adventure, and I didn't like it very much. I liked it. It was fine. It was Time Stories, but it felt very by the numbers, no interesting twists, just it's a thing, it happened, we solved it, yay. Prophecy of Dragons was an adventure. That's why I'm giving it special recognition as my number one, because it took the base game to another level. And this is what I want to see from it going forward. That's how amazing it was, and so many good memories I have of it. So I think it deserves recognition just for that fact. I'm eagerly awaiting the next one, which I think is the Arctic Expedition one. I hope it does the same thing. I hope it's as broad and expansive as this one was, because it is, even if it's 3/4 of as good as this one is, it's amazing. So, and this expansion alone could keep Time Stories on my top 100 list for a very long time to come. That is the Prophecy of Dragons expansion for Time Stories, my number one expansion of 2016. Alright guys, one last thing I want to do real quick is go through the 5 expansions I picked for last year, just to go over them again. I don't know, but they're for games I love, so I'm still playing with them. My number 5 last year was Eldritch Horror Under the Pyramids. Still not my favorite of the big box sets. In fact, I think the new one, Dreamlands, is better than that one. And Mountains of Madness is still the best, but still a very good one. I'll take any content I can get for Eldritch Horror, as I said, and I love the big box sets. My number 4 last year was Roll for the Galaxy Ambition. Great, loved it, made a great game even better with adding more variety and stuff to do, and a cool new die in the game as well. My number 3 last year was Imperial Settlers Atlanteans. Love it! New character, new faction for Imperial Settlers, which is an amazing top 10 game for me, and the Atlanteans were really cool. They added these cool gears to the game. They played completely differently than the other factions, and I loved it. My number 2 last year was a legendary set, of course, and it was the Secret Wars Volume 1 set, which I think I liked a little bit more than the Volume 2 set, or maybe Volume 2 wasn't quite out at the time. I'm not sure. But Secret Wars was another big box set like Civil War, and it was great. So many cool, crazy things because the Secret Wars storyline was crazy. And my number 1 expansion last year for 2015 was Komet Tossetti. Again, take a great game, make it even better by adding a whole new die and new power tiles and new ways to play the game. Oh, love it. Komet is so good. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. That is my top 10 or top 5 of 2016 expansions. Can't wait to see if there's new cool stuff added to games I love in 2017. Take care.